Welcome back to Courageous Chicks TV. This is the third episode in our series that we're doing a book study on the secret thoughts of successful women, which is about why we suffer from the imposter syndrome. So hit me up with likes and comments. I'd love to get your feedback on what you've learned so far, what your thoughts are on the first couple of episodes that we've had. So previously on Courageous Chicks TV, the first week we talked about what the imposter syndrome is, the definition. And we've been working with the definition that says a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evidence of success. So there's lots of data, there's lots of experience we have where we've been successful, but for some reason we're disconnected from that. So last week we talked about this not so exclusive club where women are a part of this imposter syndrome. And that for some reason, we've disconnected the feeling of attaching with our accomplishments from knowing that we've had these accomplishments and we've had success. So this book study is about transforming that thinking so that we can feel like the bright, capable, successful women that we really are. So good job to Eileen, Laura, and Alice for putting your accomplishments in the comments below last week. And that doesn't let you off the hook for this week. I'd love to see some more there. And I'd love to see some more of you put your accomplishments in there too, so that we can celebrate you and we can support each other. So today we're going to talk about the 7 reasons why we might be feeling part of the imposter syndrome. And it's interesting that in the book she talks about that it's not only, once you hear these, it's not only logical, but it's also expected that we would feel this way based on these 7 situations. So the first one she talks about, let me just do a little disclaimer before I get in there. So I think that going through today, there might be some feelings of maybe resentment or judgment of ourselves and others, maybe being offended. And so just acknowledge that there's some things that might come up and release that. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and forgiving. This is all a journey and learning it together. So the first reason that she talks about in the book that we might be feeling imposter syndrome probably is, it's first probably because most people experience this, that we're human, that we are imperfect, that we are going to make mistakes, we're imperfect mates, kids, parents, co-workers, bosses, employees, friends. We are all imperfect and we're going to make mistakes. And a lot of times people are doing the best they can, but if they're working on messages that they've received up to that point in their life, the messages they've gotten as input, that's going to be the same kind of messages that they deliver as output. So understanding maybe where somebody might be coming from based on their experience or their history, not necessarily lets them off the hook, but just might give you a different perspective on why they're sending the messages that they are. A lot of times these things come from our childhood, and it might be a case where as siblings, kids were labeled. You might have been the smart one or the funny one or the talented one or the athletic one. And so while those labels can be useful, because if you're labeled the smart one, you kind of know what's the criteria for being smart, and then you can do that and get recognition, but they can also be very limiting and can make us feel like we really, if we're not that, then we can't be that. And that's a self-limiting thought. So again, don't judge yourself, don't judge others for messages that have come before you, messages that you've received, messages that you've delivered in there, because we're all imperfect. And if we're working on improving ourselves, we're going to mess up. We're going to mess up. So just be kind to yourself. So that was the first one. We're all human, we're all imperfect. So the second situation where you might be feeling like an imposter is if you're a student. Now, this can come in the case where you're in a formal education program where you're going to be evaluated. And so knowing that, you can kind of brace yourself for the messages that you're going to receive. But sometimes messages can come from somebody where they might tell you, that's the worst paper I have ever seen, but it didn't suck as bad as it could. All right, well, that can be harsh, but thinking about maybe what messages did they get growing up? What messages did they receive to that point in their life? And understanding why they're delivering that. Now, that doesn't make it right that they've done that or lessen the blow that that's really harsh way for them to communicate. But just understanding that's the situation that maybe can be causing you to have some of these feelings of imposter syndrome, that you're never going to make it in whatever you're doing. And the other area of being a student is in informal education. Maybe you're just reading a book about different ways of improving yourself, or you've started to do something new, learn a new skill. We can be really hard on ourselves. So one analogy that a friend of mine gave me one time that I think is really helpful is that if you think of this journey as you would maybe a high school sports team. So they have what's generally referred to as a C team. So this is the starting point where maybe you've never done this before. You have no skills, you have no experience. You start here with the expectation that you're learning something. And you're not expected to be performing at the varsity level. No, you're on the C team for a reason, and you need to develop your skills and you need to practice and hone this so that you can get to the point where you're going to go up to junior varsity. Same thing. You're not expected to perform at the varsity level, but you're expected to perform better than you did on the C team. So think of this as a spectrum, a continuum about where you're at, and that it is a journey and you're learning along the way. All right, situation number 3 that might be causing some of these imposter feelings. You work in an organization that thrives on self-doubt. So this can be a place where maybe all you hear is negative feedback. It might be a case where there's a lot of competition instead of cooperation in an environment. It might be, I call this kind of, what have you done for me lately? That you're only as good as your most recent accomplishment. And if you haven't done anything lately, then you're not good. If you spend most of your time here, this can be a really difficult environment to be in. And this can be one where a lot of people really internalize this self-doubt and believe it. And I think start doing this really self-limiting thinking. So this number 3 might be an area where, along with number 1, because we're all imperfect, that a lot of us can relate to as far as imposter feelings. So the 4th reason is you work alone. By nature, you're disconnected. And so I know for me, my mind just goes and goes and goes with all of these thoughts, unless something comes in to stop it. So if you were going to the office and you kind of had coworkers, you sort of knew what the expectations were, and you kind of had your bearings in the environment a little bit, you knew how to perform. But working on your self alone could be a little bit different in that kind of an environment. So get somebody that can be a partner with you, so that you have someone that can give you a different perspective, can bounce ideas off, that you can really sort of have some connections with somebody else there. The 5th reason why you might fall into the imposter syndrome is you work in a creative field. And at first I thought, well, why is this an area that's unique from the other 6 areas she talks about? And why is this different? Well, what she says is that generally, if you're in a creative field, so this can be an author, can be an actress. You are, you're highly public, and you are really, in today's technology, just, you're, I don't want to say exposed, you're out there for the world. And so a lot of people are critical. And again, this is kind of an environment too, where what have you done for me lately? That you're only as good as your most recent accomplishment in the creative field many times. And so this can be a different take on an area where people might tend to feel more of an imposter syndrome. So the sixth reason why you might be feeling like an imposter is you're a stranger in a strange land. And this can mean literally that you are in another culture, but it also can mean you're in another country. And again, it's a feeling of disconnected, that you really don't feel like maybe you have support where you're at, that you're totally outside of your comfort zone. And this can be an area where it can cause us to, not just from a cultural and a geography perspective, but any kind of a change where maybe you take a new job and everybody else in that new place has worked together for a long, long time. So they really know each other and you feel like an outsider. And so you just maybe are feeling completely inadequate. I mean, they hired you because you have a lot of experience and competence, but you're not feeling like that. And so one of the things that I've done that's worked when I remember to do this is that when I start something new, I give myself permission to feel uncomfortable for 90 days. And that helps me kind of release that a little bit, that stress, that pressure of on day 1 or day 10, whatever it is, of feeling like I have to perform, exactly at the absolute top of my game, because nobody else is expecting that when you're just getting started. You're learning still. You're getting the bearings. You're getting your feelings for, this new place that you're starting. So every time that I remind myself to give myself permission to feel uncomfortable for 90 days, every single time before 90 days is up, I have gone to a new comfort level and I can breathe a little bit and I'm like, okay, I've got this. So try that one out. I'd love to know if you do and how that works for you. The final and seventh one, at least that she's got in the book, and you might have some others too, the seventh reason why she describes, Valerie Young in the book, why we can have these feelings of imposter syndrome, is that you feel like you have to represent your entire social group. So for example, this might mean you are the first person in your family to go to college. And so being the first of anything can bring a lot of pressure and can just bring these feelings like I have to be absolutely perfect because I'm representing everyone that's coming behind me and I have to set the pace and set the tone for that. Maybe you are the first woman to ever join an all-male team. So anytime you're the first can be a situation where you feel tremendous pressure to represent other social groups. So a couple of things that she talks about in the book. One is, first of all, for any of these things, and this is one of the main reasons I started the Courageous Chicks Facebook group, is because I truly believe that we have to connect and support each other as women to really raise the level of humanity in the world. The rising tide floats all boats, and I really believe that. And what she says in the book is, don't confuse the discomfort caused by feeling outnumbered with the idea that you're not smart enough or are in some way not worthy of being there. You are worthy of being there. You are bright and you are capable. And just because you're the first doesn't mean that there has to be all this extra pressure for you to perform for the people that are going to follow after you. So refer back to item number 1. We're all human. We're all imperfect. So be kind, be encouraging to one another, be supportive to one another, realizing that really these are 7 situations that are causing us to feel like that. So today was about taking the perspective of feeling personal about this imposter syndrome and really taking it to understand that it's less personal and more situational that's causing these feelings. So that's empowering in the way that it really gives us things that we can do about it. But like I said in the beginning, it might be bringing up some stuff for you, and acknowledge that, release it, and decide that you have choices from this point forward. So which one of those 7, you can put multiple if you want. So put a number in the comments below. Which one resonated most with you? Which one do you see for yourself, or do you see for others in your life as well, that you feel like they're experiencing as well? So next week, we are going to talk about another critical piece to this imposter syndrome: society's assumptions about female competence. This is going to be a good one. Must see TV. All right. Thank you for watching so much, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.